Welcome to Defense Investigation, a how-to guide for private investigators, presented by educatedinvestigator.com. Defense investigators are licensed private investigators who specialize in criminal defense work. Typically, they work for criminal defense attorneys, helping to represent men and women who are accused of crimes. The attorneys will hire investigators in order to go out and locate witnesses, interview witnesses, locate video, audio, social media, or some sort of paper documents, and any other kind of evidence that might end up being useful when the defendant eventually has their day in court. A criminal defense case begins with an arrest. The arrest might happen during the commission of the crime, or the arrest might take place days, weeks, months, even years later. At the time of the arrest, the prosecution will have a narrative of what happened. This is called the prosecution's theory. After the defendant speaks with an attorney, the defense team will have a narrative of what happened as well. This is called the defense theory. If the defense attorney hires an investigator to help work the case, the investigator's job is to locate any individuals and any documents and any other evidence that might help to demonstrate the narrative that makes up the defense theory. If the case is complex, extremely serious, or perhaps a very large case with multiple co-defendants, there may be more than one investigator on the case, and there may be some specialized investigators, such as a mitigation specialist. Defense attorneys will typically have a list for their investigators for any case, and some of the typical tasks on that list will be to interview the defendant, which is often several different interviews, to locate witnesses that are named in the police report and interview them, to try and locate additional witnesses, either by asking the initial witnesses or by canvassing the neighborhood and knocking on doors. Attorneys will ask investigators to locate records, to take photos or videos, to write reports about the investigation that they have performed, to serve subpoenas on witnesses to appear at trial, and they may be asked to testify at trial as well. Probably the most important task that a defense investigator will be given is the interview. The interview will not only be an interview with the defendant, but it will also be an interview with the defendant's family, an interview with any witness who saw what happened, and it could also be interviews with people who know the defendant from work or from school, or people who have heard rumors. All of these interviews are important because they form the basis for the facts that the jury will hear if the case goes to trial. Being able to make a good connection, a good human connection with somebody, and have an interview in a way that makes that person feel comfortable and able to talk openly is the key to helping defend one's client. One of the first tasks that a defense attorney will assign to their investigator is to have an interview with the defendant themselves. Often the interview will take place in the local jail where the defendant is being held pre-trial. But if the defendant is released, the interview could take place at the defendant's home or the investigator's office or the attorney's office. The purpose of the interview is both for the investigator to begin some kind of a relationship with the defendant, to begin to build some kind of trust with them, and also to find out what the defendant's point of view is on their charges. Do they feel that they are completely innocent of the charges? Do they have an alibi? Do they have names of witnesses that are not in the police reports? Do they feel that they are guilty of some of the facts of the crime, but they have some sort of justification, such as self-defense? If the case is complicated, if there are co-defendants, if it is a very serious charge, it's likely that the defense investigator is going to meet with the defendant many times in order to go over police reports, to talk about interviews with witnesses, to gather more information. And so it's important to begin the relationship with the defendant, trying to build trust. And if you don't get all the information that you need about the charges on the very first interview, that's okay. It's okay to start slowly. Building trust is more important. Regardless of whether you've performed hundreds of interviews or whether you're going into your very first one, there are a few ground rules that help to make interviews successful. The first is to choose a location where the person being interviewed feels comfortable. This could be their home or their place of business. It could be a park nearby. It could be your office. It might mean that they want to have a family member with them. Whatever it is, if you set it up so that the person being interviewed feels comfortable, they're going to be better able to talk about things that might be difficult emotionally. The second part of a successful interview is to have as few distractions as possible. It's difficult to get a good interview with somebody who is driving, or if you're in a house and there's lots of children running around, or there's a television on in the background. The third, and maybe the most important, is to listen carefully to what people are saying and use reflective listening skills in order to make sure that you're hearing accurately what they're saying. So you ask questions like, okay, I heard you say that John Smith walked across the street and got into a black car. Is that right? This gives the person who's talking the chance to correct you, or it gives them the chance to say yes, and then this other thing happened. When you're interviewing, make sure you're taking notes. It doesn't do any good to do an interview and try to hold everything in your memory. Try to use open-ended questions so the person's not just answering yes or no. And if you have any confusion, ask clarifying questions. Don't pretend you understand if you don't understand. It's okay to say, I don't get that. Wait a minute. Stop. Let's go back. Finally, when you go into the interview, know what it is that you're looking for. This means you should be prepared. You should have read the police reports, or if there's no police reports relevant to this, you should have an idea of what the facts are that will help your client and what the facts are that will hurt your client, so you know what questions are important to ask. Often in defense investigation work, the defense investigator is provided with police reports that have the names of multiple witnesses, and these are usually people that the police have already spoken with. But it's also very common that there are additional witnesses who the police are unaware of or who they were unable to locate. So there are a few ways in order to try to find these witnesses. The first is shoe leather. You walk around the area where the alleged incident took place and you just ask everybody. You knock on doors, you go into stores, you go to houses and apartments, you talk to people who are walking their dog and ask them what they saw and if they've heard anything. You ask every witness that you speak with if they know anybody else who might have some information that should be passed on. If there's video that you're able to locate or video in the case, review it and see if you can identify anybody. If there are any emergency calls, such as 911 calls, listen to them and then compare the calls to the information that's in the police report. It's possible that there are people who made emergency calls, but they were not interviewed. And finally, don't forget to look at social media. If this is an incident that was reported in the local news, people might have posted comments about it that might indicate that they have information that's relevant. Requesting records that will help defend your client is something that should be done as early as possible in the case because it can take quite a lot of time to get the records returned to you. Most of the records that defense investigators are requesting are going to be requested through the local, state, or municipal public records system. So the first step is knowing your local public records laws. The typical records that you'll be requesting could come from local courts. It could be some sort of a background check from the local police, the local Department of Motor Vehicles, local jail, probation. Any government entity typically creates quite a lot of public records, and these are available to anybody who asks for them as long as you know the appropriate procedure for asking. Defense investigators are often asked to locate surveillance video that is relevant to the allegations. Typically, these come from some building or perhaps a vehicle that was nearby. Defense investigators are often also asked to create a video or to take photos. The photos might be of the scene, they might be of individuals, and the video footage might be of the scene or the surrounding area. They might be a recreation of an incident. It might be a video driving where an individual is alleged to have driven before or after the incident took place. There's a lot of technical issues in the use of video and audio equipment, but the simplest takeaway is to make sure that at the very least you know how to operate the equipment, you know how to verify that you've got sound, that you have at least decent lighting, that the equipment is capturing the image clearly, it's not out of focus, that the story that you want to tell is one you're able to tell using the individuals or the scenes that you're capturing. And maybe most importantly, always make sure that you have backup equipment just in case something fails, a battery is not charging or a lens breaks. You always need to have a backup because you might not have a second chance to take that same photo. Often, defense attorneys will ask their investigators to write reports of the actions that they've taken. So these could be reports of interviews with witnesses, or they could be reports of the defense investigator's visit to a scene. When you're writing these reports, again, remember that your audience can be everybody from the attorney and the defendant to the judge and the prosecutor, and if they end up becoming part of the court record, uh, anybody in the public who can see them. So keep them simple. Don't make the language flowery. Make sure everything you write down can be verified. Write the report, let it sit for a moment, then rewrite it. If you're not a good editor, find somebody who can help you with editing and proofreading. As the case gets close to trial, it may become necessary to start serving subpoenas to have witnesses show up and testify at court. The first question with subpoenas is going to be whether the defense investigator serves them or whether they are handed to a subpoena service. This might end up being a financial decision, or it might have something to do with how easy it would be to locate people and serve them. The important thing, if you're an investigator and you're serving subpoenas, is to make sure that you know the appropriate rules of service and what qualifies as a legitimate service of process. Typically, when you're trying to do process service, the best place to start is a person's home, usually in the evening or on the weekend. Almost everybody is home late at night on a Sunday. If you can't find them at home, try their work. Sometimes you have to return multiple trips. Probably 90% of people will be able to be served a summons just by going to their home and their work a few times. For the difficult ones, sometimes it is necessary to have some kind of a trick, like pretending to be delivering a package or looking for a runaway dog or delivering flowers or some other kind of trick. These are things that are often best left to people who have a fair amount of experience with process service. When the trial gets underway, it may be time for the defense investigator to testify. They may have to testify about the work that they did or who they served a subpoena on or something that they were told by a witness. Testifying can be a little nerve-wracking, and many people do not like speaking in front of a group. And when you're testifying, you're not only speaking in front of the jury and the judge and multiple attorneys, but you are likely to be cross-examined by an attorney who may not like you. So keep it simple. Make sure you look nice, be prepared, review your notes, answer the questions simply, then stop talking and listen. Be polite, take your time, don't allow them to rush you. If you don't understand what's being asked of you, ask for clarification. Keep your cool, keep your patience. Criminal defense work can be very rewarding, but it's not for everybody. There are a lot of other ways people use their private investigation skills. But if you are a licensed private investigator and you don't like bullies, if you want to fight for the underdog, if you enjoy human drama, you may end up liking a career in criminal defense work. If you want to learn more about defense investigation, please visit us at educatedinvestigator.com.